Computers away right now, please. You can't do your delta math right now. No. What good's it gonna get you, Owen? Then you're just gonna have. Yeah, if I had one printed. I don't have. No, I'm gonna find the keys or print one so you can make the key for me. We're gonna do these problems first. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's look at example 6. Okay. Whenever you see a problem worded like this, I want you don't necessarily have to graph these on a graph, but I want you to draw me a picture for these. You'll see whenever we do example 7 why. Okay. So line segment AC has a midpoint at B. So when I see line segment AC, we name line segments by the end point. So that tells me that this line segment has A on one end and C on the other. And B is the midpoint, so B is halfway between. There. So A is at 3, 7. And C is at -8, 11. And we need to find the coordinates of B. So we're looking for the midpoint here, right? We don't know the midpoint. We need to find it. So this is just a straight midpoint problem. I'm going to show you the reason I'm making you draw that line for this on the next problem. Okay? So if we need to find this midpoint, Easton missed this yesterday, so we're going to educate him now on how to find the midpoint. Midpoint, we basically just average the x's and average the y's. To find an average, we add together and divide by how many there are. So if I'm averaging the x's right here, I'm just going to do 3 plus -8 divided by 2 because we've got 2 points. All right. And then for the y's, 7 and 11, I'll do 7 plus 11 divided by 2. And so I get 3 plus -8 is going to give me -5 over 2. I get 18 over 2 here. And as Peyton said, that gives me -2.5 and 9. So those are my coordinates for point B. So just add together, divide by 2. Just make sure you're adding those numbers together, not subtracting in this case. 5 divided by 2 is going to be 2.5. Yeah, half of -5 will be 2.5. You can use your calculators on these, but they should be ones that when they have smaller numbers, at least, should be ones you don't really need your calculator for. Go put your phones up and get your calculators. Put your phones up. I'm going to go check phone slots. So if you haven't put your phone up. All right.
This is my life.
Yeah. She was so funny whenever she came back. She can't. Especially now. Especially now. She probably could have gone before. She has a... Let me put record. If A is at -2, 1 and B is at -4, -1, find the coordinates of C. So this is why I always, if it's worded like this, I always want you to draw a picture. We got A, we got C, we got B in the middle. Okay? Because look at the points that they give us. They give us A is at -2, 1. B is at 4, -1. We are finding the coordinates of C. Are we finding a midpoint here? No. if we do midpoint formula, if we do this, don't write it down because it's wrong, but if we do negative 2 plus 4 divided by 2 and 1 plus negative 1 divided by 2, which would give us 1, 0, what we just found was this point right here, which is not what they're asking us for. They're not asking us for the point halfway between A and B. So, how in the world are we going to find this? I put the actual graph over here so we could graph this. So negative 2, 1 is right here. And 4, negative 1 is right here. So just like, what general area should C be in? Which quadrant? You guys know the names of the quadrants? 1, 2, 3, 4. Over here, which quadrant should our answer be in? It should be in 4, right? We should be looking at this general area over here somewhere. Okay? Hank, when you come back in, would you mind shutting the door, please? All right, so this general area. She's extra excited today. Yeah, or yeah. Okay, so from A to B, thank you, Hank. From A to B, we need to get over here to C. So any ideas of what we could think about doing here? What do you think, Marley?
I was just like, what plus negative 2 equal 8?
Okay. All right. So you're kind of thinking of it this way. You got negative 2 plus mystery number divided by 2. And that's supposed to give us 4, right? So negative 2 plus something. In order to get 4 over here, we need an 8 in the top. So what number could we put there? 10. And then if we do that, we'd get 8 divided by 2, which would give us 4. So that's one way to think about it. We should have 10 as our x coordinate. So then we could do something similar with the y's, right? 1 plus some mystery number divided by 2 needs to give us negative 1. That needs to give us our midpoint right there. So what do we need to get in the top? We need negative 2. What number would give us negative 2? If we put it in that blank circle right there. Negative 3. So negative 1 plus negative 3, I'm sorry, 1 plus negative 3 would give us negative 2 over 2, which would give us that negative 1. So we get negative 3. There. So we can kind of think of it from the formula. In fact, if we wanted, we could set it up like this. Formula-wise, we could do negative 2 plus, I'm just going to call this x because I don't know what it is, divided by 2 equals 4. So if you were really like an algebra person, you prefer algebra, you could multiply both sides by 2. You got negative 2 plus x equals 8, and then you could add the 2. X equals 10. So if you prefer algebra, that might be a way that you want to go. You could do the same thing over here. 1 plus y over 2 equals negative 1. And so you could multiply both sides by 2. 1 plus y equals negative 2. Subtract the 1. Y equals negative 3. So that's one option here. Here's a couple more options for you. Another thing that we could think about is we could think about this from the graph, right? So to get from A to B, I'd have to go down 2 and to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if I want to make that the midpoint, I would need to go down 2 and to the right 6 again, and that would give me this point right here, and the coordinates of that point are 10, negative 3. Oh, negative 3 ran off the graph there. Okay, so that's an option. I'm going to show you guys my favorite way to do this. It's really the same as the graph, but it's just going to be, you don't actually have to graph it on a graph, so it's helpful if you got really big numbers or if you just don't really want to graph it. So I'm going to erase this like it's not here. Right here, this is what I like to do the most. So if you have been like, I'm not paying attention, I don't care about this, I don't want to know how to do this because this is boring, then pay attention right now so that you can get this, so you can know what you're doing right here. So let's think about sort of the same way I was doing with the graph. How far, what do I have to do to get from -2 to 4? I have to add 6. That's like that green arrow that's going to the 6, right? 6, right? So if I have to add 6 to get from -2 to 4, then I just need to add 6 again, right? 4 plus 6 is 10. And that's my x-coordinate. I can do the same thing with my y's. So from 1 to -1, what would I have to do? Not add 2. Subtract 2. So that's like that red arrow. I should have done these colors backwards. That's like that red arrow that's going down 2. So I could just subtract 2 again, right? -1 minus 2 gives me -3. That's my favorite way to do it. I think it's the quickest. But any of these ways will work. So let's look at another problem. Okay. The end point of a line segment is -15, 12. The midpoint is 10, 0. Find the coordinates of the other end point. So this is like the problem we just did. They gave us the end point and they're giving us the midpoint. So we're not going to do add together, divide by 2 on this one because that would give us that like midpoint of the midpoint and the end point there. So I always draw myself a picture for these. It doesn't give you like an A, B, C, but we know one of these endpoints is -15, 12. We know the midpoint is 10, 0. It's really important that you get those in the right place there. 10, 0 has to be the midpoint. Okay, so let's do that same thing that we just did here because I don't have a graph on this one. What do I have to do to get from -15 to 10? I need to add 25. So if I want to get the x-coordinate of my other endpoint, I would need to add 25 again. What am I going to get? 35. Does that make sense? Okay. Then we're going to do the same thing with the y's. So to get from 12 to 0, what am I going to have to do? I'm subtracting 12. So if I subtract 12 again, -12. So there's my answer. This is also helpful because you can see our numbers are too big here to really graph that on any standard size graph. You can always check your work really easily for these. Hopefully you were doing pretty well with midpoint, although a couple of you didn't do your homework. So to check, just take your endpoints and do the midpoint formula. So if I do -15 plus 35 divided by 2 and 12 plus -12 divided by 2, then this will give me 20 over 2, which is 10. And this gives me 0 over 2, which is just 0, which matches this right here. So that tells me that this is right. So you can check it by just doing the midpoint at the end if you want, but you don't do the midpoint at the beginning. Okay. Now, it always seems to happen right here on problems like example 9. All right, the park is halfway between the hospital and the library. if the library is at -5, 2 and the park is at 4, 1, find the coordinates of the hospital. The first thing I want you to watch out for is, what are we dealing with here? Are we doing distance, or are we thinking about midpoint? Not distance. It's midpoint. If you see, find the coordinates of, or it might just say find the location of, we're looking for the place that it's at, right? The coordinates tell us where to go to find this, right? So we have to answer this with a point. Our answer is a point, not the distance between these 2 points. So think about, I think sometimes it may help for you to think about what this really means, because I have found most students can do distance, some students can do midpoint, but whenever we start doing these problems, some students start doing distance when they should be doing midpoint, or they do midpoint when they should be doing distance. That would be like if I said, it would be like if I asked, Julian how far it is between here and Walmart, and he told me Cookout. Right? As if I said, Julian, how far is it from Elkin High School to Walmart? And he says Cookout. Or Sheets. Maybe Sheets is a little more on the way. He's not answering the question I asked him, right? I want miles, or at least how many minutes it takes you to get there. He is telling me what's halfway between. And we would think, what is he thinking? Has he lost his mind? He does not know what he's talking about, right? Or if I said, Julian, what is the halfway point between Elkin High School and Walmart? And he tells me 4 miles. He's not answering that question either, right? So make sure you're answering the question that is asked. This one is asking for a point. So we're doing something with midpoint. We might need to find the midpoint. We might need to find like one of the endpoints, but we are not doing distance on this problem. And I see a lot of students, especially when they get all mixed together, trying to do distance. So no distance on this. So park is halfway between the hospital and the library. So draw yourself a line, label it. Park is in the middle. It's between the hospital and the library. All right, then library is at -5, 2. Park is at 4, 1. So are we finding a midpoint, or are we finding the missing endpoint? Missing endpoint. So it's really important to draw your picture for this, or you'll do the wrong thing. All right. Sometimes it might be worded this way, but they give you hospital and library, so you are finding the midpoint. Sometimes it's the endpoint that you're looking for. So we got to start at the endpoint over here. We got to go to the midpoint. So Vince, to go from -5 to 4, what do I have to do? So, not quite. 9. So we can see we're increasing here. If you're ever unsure about this, you can always grab your calculator. Didn't mean for that to happen. All right, you can always grab your calculator, and to tell the difference between these, you can do 4 minus -5, and you'll get 9. There, you need to pay attention to whether you're adding or subtracting. Here we're adding because 4 is higher, right? Or you could do -5 minus 4. It gives you a negative, but you know 9 is the amount that you're going if you subtract those. So we add 9. So we would need to add 9 again to get the coordinates of the hospital here. And so that will give us 13. Okay, Presley, to get from 2 to 1, what do we have to do? -1. So we will do that again to get our endpoint over here, what will we get, Presley? Not -1. You're taking this number right here, 1, and you're subtracting 1 from it. 1 minus 1 gives us 0. Right here, so 13, 0. Okay, questions? All right. Okay, we got one more type of problem that we're going to see. I like these. You definitely have to draw a picture for this. B is the midpoint of AD. So let's draw us a line. A, D, we put B in the middle. C is the midpoint of BD. So where should I put C on this line? In between B and D. So C is right here. A is at -140. D is at -20, 60. All right, so what are we doing on this problem? Okay, we need to find B first, and then we can use that to find C. So we are doing a midpoint, but just the first time we do the midpoint is not going to give us the answer. That's going to give us this halfway point here, and then we'll have to do midpoint again. So Zane, tell me what I'll do to find this midpoint right here to find B in the middle. Okay, so midpoint is an average. So we take our two endpoints. We're going to take our x's. So this and this, those are our x coordinates. We're going to add them together. All right, so we got -100 plus -20. And then it's average, so we add together and divide by how many there are. And there's only 2, so we add together and divide by 2. Okay, then we're going to do the same thing, but with the y's. So we're looking at the y coordinates there. So what will that look like for this one, Zane? Good. So we'll get 40 plus 60, and then there's just 2. So we divide that by 2. So this is going to give me -120 over 20. I'm sorry, over 2. And then 100 over 2. So that's going to give me -60, 50. All right, so those are my coordinates for B. That is not my answer. That's not C. They asked me for C. So we've got to do midpoint again. This time we're ignoring A. We're not using A because C is the midpoint of B and D. So, Passion, tell me what we'll do for this one. C is between which two numbers? Or which? Yep. Good. Also over 2. So that'll be -80 over 2. 110 over 2. So we'll get -40 and 55. And that is our C. And that's your answer because they were asking for C for this one. So it's really important to draw a picture for pretty much all of the midpoint formulas unless it just says find the midpoint between these 2 points. Then you know you're just doing midpoint formula. But if it gives you line segment stuff, draw the picture. It might be just a regular midpoint. It might not. So we have got Delta Math. Delta Math is going to have some regular just find the midpoint problems. It's also going to have find the endpoint problems. It doesn't have one like number 10 because Delta Math didn't have any of those available. but your review that you're going to have will. So if you finish your Delta Math, let me know, and I will give you the test review. We're going to work on the test review a little in class on Monday, but it's mostly going to be your homework on Monday. So if you finish Delta Math early, then you can go ahead and get started on that. Yeah, test review is on paper. It's not very expensive because it's only by teacher. I mean, it might be like $100 a teacher, but considering that one teacher serves so many people, it's really not all that expensive. Yeah, it's way cheaper than IXL. IXL is more expensive. But I like, huh? No, but I just don't like it as much. I don't like the problems as much, and it is very, like, I like the Delta Math gives you a second chance on problems. Yeah, and Delta Math I feel like is a little bit, Delta Math just has, it's easier for me to control stuff. I like the way they split things up better. I just like it better. I think IXL is good, but it can be frustrating. And IXL sometimes gets like way too difficult on those last problems, and then it's impossible to get to the 90. So we may still use it some, but it's not high on my list. I think elementary uses it more though. We pay for it like a whole district, so I'm not sure how much it costs, but I do know it's, even though Delta Math is becoming more and more used by teachers because it is pretty good, so the price might start to go up. So we'll see.